All right, greetings, my dudes. So following along from the last video that I published, this is kind of showing what I've been working on. So I have been working on the day-night cycle in the game, which took a considerable amount of work, which is why it took me like 3 weeks to actually get this coded in. Because I had to code an entire orbital simulation and then accurately model that around the player on like the local scene. I'll be doing some time skips around as to demonstrate the sun and the moon in various parts of the orbit. But you can see the sunrise sequence here, which I believe the last video showed the sunset sequence. But you can see how the sun flare kind of comes up, and then as the sky turns from black to blue, the sun flare will slowly disappear as the world gets lighter and lighter. Once it reaches its full normal brightness, and then I believe it's there now. But anyways, the sun is visible over that way. And then the moon would be directly opposite of it at the moment. In order to see the... Oh, there it goes. All right, so in order to see the orbital map, if you press tab, I kind of just left it enabled. It will bring you to the actual orbital map, and then you can right-click to move the camera around the selected object. And then you can use your scroll wheel to zoom in and out. I've got orbital lines rendering for all of the orbiting objects. And then I've successfully managed to model axial tilt. At least I think so. I'm not sure if this rendering is exactly correct. Furthermore, the textures that you're seeing aren't really representative of actual land within the game world, since this is randomly generated and these textures are the same every time. I'll get to making actual randomized textures at some point, but that will be something that needs to be addressed at some point. You can see the sun over there. Also, you can move the camera inside of the currently selected object. In order to switch objects, you just press caps lock and it will cycle to the next one. So it'll go from moon to Earth to sun, from the Earth to the moon to the sun. And you can see that the moon is directly behind the Earth. Well, not directly. It's close. It is orbiting. And then the sides of this are lit based off of their facing direction towards the sun. And then if you zoom out far enough, you'll actually get the Earth's orbital line here. So the distances are 1/10 of what they are in the actual solar system. So I made sure I used real data on this to make sure that the orbit calculations were actually correct. So this is modeled at least somewhat correctly. I did make it so the calculations for the orbital times are about 10 times longer than what they would be at this radius based off of the mass. Otherwise, I think the moon would zip around the Earth in like a couple of minutes, and that's just really fast. Additionally, oh god, that's so bright. Yeah, here's the sun. It's got a sun flare. That's really all there is to it. The sun currently sits in the center of the universe. So there's only 3 objects. It's just the moon, Earth, and sun. And each of the bodies rotates, with the exception of the sun. I don't think I put a rotation period in for it. But each of the bodies rotates. For the moon, because the moon's tidally locked, its rotation period is going to be the same as its orbital period. And then for the Earth will rotate fully once every hour of real time. And then this is taken into account for the perspective of the player on the ground here. So the orbital motion of both the sun and the moon are taken into account, and then it's positioned around, and then it will I'm losing my train of thought here. And then the motion of the Earth will actually influence that. So how far into the cycle it is. And then as well as that, your movement laterally, so like longitude, will affect that, as well as your latitude. So if you go more north, I think it'll go south. If you go far enough, it will also, you'll also see it kind of like go almost like 90 degrees as you approach like the poles, kind of like what happens in real life, along with the sun just eventually dipping below the horizon. So there's going to be spots on the Earth where it's in permanent darkness, depending on how far you go. Because I've mapped the X and Z coordinates of the player to the to Latin long, the player's not currently restricted into those bounds yet, so because I haven't gotten to coding that in yet. And that's kind of why it took me so long, was because I had to make this simulation and then make sure this transitioned correctly. Yeah, and then after that, I'm going to go ahead and do a slight time skip real quick. Alright, so I've jumped ahead in time here. I'm not sure how badly YouTube's going to compress this because of the darkness on there. But you can see the moon up in the sky along with the sky box. You can see it very slowly rotating as the moon as the moon rotates around the player. Additionally, there is axial tilt. I forgot to mention that is accounted for in the rotation. So if I'm staring directly west, you can see the moon isn't quite aligned, although it might be. Basically, throughout the entire Earth's orbit, the moon is going to... Not the moon. The moon and the sun are going to get rotated based off the axial tilt, and it will oscillate between its positive and negative variance. So it kind of mimics that movement of the objects around the Earth as the Earth orbits the sun. And then I have one more thing to demonstrate, and it will be how the moon looks during the daytime, because, well, the moon looks a little bit different during the daytime than it does during the night. Alright, so I'll be back in a minute, whenever this is done. Okay, here's now a good demonstration of how the moon looks during the daytime. You can see it over here. If you've ever looked at the moon during the daytime, you'll notice that the parts of it that are not lit by sunlight look almost identical to the haze of the sky behind it. So I've managed to achieve that effect with some blending going on here. So as the moon approaches the sun, which I don't know how that moves in this simulation because I have to run it really fast in order to check that. But as the moon gets closer to the sun, it will essentially become invisible. So whatever isn't lit is just not visible. And then whenever the sun dips below the horizon, the blending effect gets removed. Otherwise, the stars will render through the moon, which looks rather silly. But yeah, that's the visual effects that I've done. I know it's not a lot, and because it really isn't. But it just took a while to code this because I wanted to make sure I got it right and that everything was accurate. Clearly, this orbital line isn't accurate because it's not going through the moon. But that's a problem for future me, because this map doesn't necessarily need to be robust enough to like work for that, but it does the job, and that's all that really matters. But yeah, it now gets very dark if you play this for longer than half an hour. So next I'll be working on some more mechanics in terms of like taking damage. So probably going to be doing things like drowning and like taking fall damage. And then I'll start working on other things relating to like crafting and whatnot. Yeah, that is it for me. Take care, my dudes, and have a nice day.